Decimation of the Dark Fleet and the Liberation of Terra, a nonfiction galactic anthology. Several conversations of Dr. Micheal Salla with contactee Elena Danaan about the disappearance of the Dark Fleet drive. Micheal Salla, Elena Danaan. Preface. Unbeknownst to the vast majority of Terrans, our planet has recently been the beneficiary of an alien invasion, one for our benefit, not detriment. How this came about and what and why we know about it is due to the diligence of an exopolitic scholar drive. Micheal Salla, as a result of a set of interviews with a contactee named Elena Danaan. Since an understanding of the explanation is a bit out of the league of a lay reader, some background is in order. For the last several decades, our galactic brothers and sisters have been teasing us with visions of a glorious golden future delivered via contactees capable of taking down what they had to say. Of course, not all that many of these messengers had audiences big enough to cause that much of a stir. Back in the 80s, Ken Carey was responsible for a number of visionary books, most notably The Third Millennium, Living in the Post-Historic World. Later in 1990, T101, The Cosmic Instruction Manual for Planetary Evolution, a tiny cutesy handbook from Zoev Joe that flooded the bookstores with little wisdoms that people could cuddle up to and feel good about. Then there was the book Joe Only Planet of Choice through Phyllis Glemmer, which inspired some content Gene Roddenberry put in the Star Trek material. None of these were the scary fear porn that might come from the National Enquirer. Instead, they hinted at a new Earth that would be reborn from what we have now and 1,000 years of peace. This kind of airy-fairy talk was short on nuts and bolts details of how this plays out in real life. Our destiny was portrayed as a new Earth with a glorious future and is given in many Spirit Galactic guided tomes, but how we would ever get there is never discussed. Back on planet Terra, the reality of the last century was that the powers that be attempted rather successfully to hide, cover up, obscure and belittle anyone who claimed the existence of off-planet visitors, travel, communications and the like. The Roswell event comes to mind as an example of the twisted lengths and silly lies involved. All that Billy Meyer Cooksville stuff was just nutso theories that had all been debunked by fake newscasters. As we got into a new century, there was a shift. The believers, experiencers, and recipients have become more and more vocal until today the number of whistleblowers has become rather unmanageable. It looks like this is the age of the controlled leak. Instead of killing off all the loose cannons, a few are allowed to tell more and more of what is really happening. People like Stephen Greer MD, author of Unacknowledged, and Corey Goode, star of the above majestic documentary and the Gaia Cosmic Disclosure series, have unleashed an undeniable storm of information, and the resultant activity is moving ahead at full steam based on quality first-person testimony. For example, we know from multiple verified sources. We signed treaties with malevolent Fourth Reich beings and others in the 1950s under the auspices of Eisenhower. We gave them control over many aspects of our society. We have been able to produce anti-gravity craft for decades. We have fleets of such crafts that patrol our solar system called Solar Warden. We have been able to time travel since the Reagan years. We have many technological wonders including free energy and anti-aging. There have been slave labor factories on the Moon, Mars, asteroids and under Antarctica. Humans from Terra are kidnapped and sold in intergalactic slave trade. We have genetic modification capabilities and use them unethically. We have med-bed devices that can regenerate missing limbs. Thousands of devices have classified patent applications that are frozen. Such topics may be plausibly deniable to disinformationists, but are discussed in detail in the references cited. Science fact or science fiction? You be the judge. Could a civilization 1,000 years more advanced than ours really do all of this? Introduction. Enter political science scholar Dr. Micheal Salla, now arguably the best-informed author in today's flurry of over 1,000 UFO books. After seeing the National Press Club presentation testimonies put forward by researcher Stephen Greer, he knew that this could be a goldmine of untapped disclosure material for other researchers if it could be verified, so he set out to do that with academic rigor. Satisfied with the outcome, he began using the material and finding even more to produce a series of over a dozen well-footnoted books covering this whistleblower material. He is the global authority on secret space program matters. Dr. Salla is unique with his broad knowledge in being able to quickly supply corroborating testimony and documentation to verify what would otherwise be single-sourced material. One of his early historical books in particular, The Hidden History of Antarctica, serves as a quality introductory starting point for beginners and experienced readers alike. Without this kind of background material, there is little hope of making full sense of all the twists and turns and hard-to-believe nature of such events. He gave a 3-hour deep dive seminar on this topic several years ago in Sydney, which is relegated as a transcript to an appendix. Forewarned is forearmed. The events, beings, and communications are real, and to ignore them will leave most people gullible, puzzled, and very much in the dark. Do your homework if you haven't, or what follows could be very mysterious and possibly even a waste of your time. Context is everything in this complex series of happenings. In this series of interviews, Dr. Salla interviews a new source of material, a professional archaeologist with a very unusual background, Elena Danaan. Before entering her professional line of work, she had art training in France and has recently produced an exceptional illustrated guide to off-planet beings based on personal contacts and insider information. She has authored several books. In these interviews, she explains her personal situation, how she came to meet and create a special enduring relationship with an off-planet rescue party, the head of that party in particular named Thorhan Aredian. He advised her in 2018 that the Earth would enter a very dangerous phase, but at the end of it humanity would be liberated from the dark forces that have controlled it for centuries, which set the stage for a series of earth-shattering announcements. Thorhan kept Elena informed of military actions his civilization had been authorized to undertake and the rationale used to justify this kind of behavior, which normally would not be allowed. He gives updates and pep talks about the expulsion of the Kiakarar, Draconian Empire, and Orion, Grey, collective forces, and Earth's cabal being isolated from their former patrons. These are the bad guys, the ones that pilot the dark fleets which his civilization came here to liquidate. In one update, Elena gives a comprehensive update on ongoing Galactic Federation of Worlds intervention on the Earth, Moon, Mars, Phobos, and recent diplomatic meetings on Jupiter, which handed over responsibility of the solar system to a consortium of spacefaring nations, making up the Artemis Accords. The Jupiter Accords gave the global elite 5 months to surrender to the Earth Alliance. If we had suppressed them all at once, the financial and economic systems on Terra would have imploded in a terrible chaos. There are better ways. They are summoned to transfer to the Alliance their keys and tools, in order to make the transition as smooth as possible for the population. Drive. Salla says, in particular, Alex Collier, James Gillond, and my U.S. Army source, JP, all confirm key aspects of Thorhan and Elena's testimony about a large fleet of spacecraft comprising highly evolved extraterrestrials that recently entered our solar system. In addition, Elena's information about an Astra Command facility on Jupiter used for galactic diplomacy was independently corroborated by a remote viewing team from the Farsight Institute. So how do we get from here, a corrupt, enslaved population engulfed in rigged elections, toxic vaccines, censorship, mass psychosis, blood-drinking Satanists, to an awakened people living in a peaceful wonderland? What are the nuts and bolts? Thorhan can be a huge help making sense of the malevolent roughnecks, but we have to do our part. We must wake up and drain the swamp. There are futuristic quantum technologies that can help us clean up elections, control money laundering, and normalize our standard of living. Will we even want elections after the briberies are revealed in all their gory detail? Is devolution of governance a better way? If you are a student of Drive Salla's books and follow his Exopolitics channel, you will probably already know all of this, but sometimes it's nice to have it all laid out in one wad so you can search and reread at your leisure. Super Soldiers and Extraterrestrial Agreements, Interview 15 with Elena Danaan on Death of Stephen Chua. https://exopolitics.org/Super Extraterrestrial Agreements Interview with Elena Danaan on Death of Stephen Chua /47 minutes Vol Agreements Interview with Danaan Saw and 4I. In this Exopolitics Today podcast, I interview Elena Danaan about the death of Stephen Chua, a super soldier from Singapore who only a week earlier had given his first public interview about his training and military experiences. Elena discusses Stephen's sudden death on March 6, 2021, and the international organization he had belonged to that arranged for him and other super soldiers to perform a variety of duties involving extraterrestrial life on Earth. Our interview covers historic agreements reached by world leaders with extraterrestrial life and how these are upheld by a cadre of highly trained super soldiers. Interview is available on Rumble and YouTube. https://www.youtube.com/watchv=image 2 hours after publication of our interview, Elena received a copy of Stephen Chua's autopsy report from his family. Cause of death was described as kidney failure. According to Elena, this is not explaining his blackouts, nose bleedings, and wounds appearing on his legs. The family also sent Elena a copy of a military ID Stephen had from the Singapore military from 1981. This will greatly assist investigation of Stephen's incredible claims and experiences. 4,031,592 Concession Pass 1,981 Military S. Micheal Salla, Ph.D. Elena's February 26, 2021 interview with Stephen is available online at https://youtube.be/emitted 2 hours update. Stephen Chua's death was on March 6, 2021. Date has been corrected. His obituary can be found here. The timing of his death, the next day, makes it clear that whistleblowers are still at great risk. Information on this first conversation in the series is included for completeness. No transcript is provided since there is no reportage from Farhan in the interview. Extraterrestrial Contact and the Galactic Federation. Second interview with Elena Danaan. https://exopolitics.org/extraterrestrial contact. The Galactic Federation interview with Elena Danaan written by Dr. Micheal Salla on March 21, 2021. In our second interview, Elena Danaan recounts her personal contact experiences, the most dramatic of which involved an abduction at age 9 by 5 gray aliens. In the midst of 2 medical procedures involving implants, she was rescued by 2 human-looking extraterrestrials using laser weapons. In the interview, Elena explains how her rescuers repurposed one of the implants so they could subsequently remain in telepathic communications. Elena learned that her rescuers belong to a galactic federation of worlds that is helping Earth's Great Awakening. Elena explains how the Galactic Federation first became interested in Earth after it was advised by another extraterrestrial political organization, the Andromeda Council, that a future galactic tyranny could be traced back to Earth in the present era. This matches the testimony of Alex Collier, who said, around 1991, that the sudden appearance of a galactic tyranny about 350 years in our future could be traced back to the Earth, Moon and Mars. In Defending Sacred Ground, Alex wrote, "Now in our galaxy there are many councils. I don't know everything about all those councils, but I do know about the Andromedan Council, which is a group of beings from 139 different star systems that come together and discuss what is going on in the galaxy. It is not a political body. What they have been recently discussing is the tyranny in our future, 357 years from now, because that affects everybody. Apparently what they have done, through time travel, is that they have been able to figure out where the significant shift in energy occurred that causes the tyranny 357 years in our future. They have traced it back to our solar system, and they have been able to further track it down to Earth, Earth's moon and Mars. Those 3 places." Defending Sacred Ground, P10, Elena recounts how President Eisenhower was betrayed by the Majestic 12 group, which made an agreement with gray aliens without his permission. This matches insider accounts that Eisenhower was on the verge of ordering the U.S. Army to take over the Area 51S4 facility controlled by the MJ-12 group in 1958 for their fight to fully brief him on their activities. She also discussed how the Galactic Federation has been working with an Earth alliance, and the 4 countries most active in this cooperation are Russia, USA, France and Israel. In addition, she corroborated Prof. Haimashed's recent claims that President Trump was actively collaborating with the Galactic Federation. Elena further explains how in November 2018, she was advised by one of her alien rescuers, Farhan Aredian, that in 2 years, the Earth would enter a very dangerous phase, but at the end of it humanity would be liberated from the dark forces that have controlled it for centuries. This brings us to contemporary political events and multiple insider accounts that claim white hats have set the stage for a series of earth-shattering announcements. Watch this fascinating interview for a glimpse into how different extraterrestrial factions are battling one another to steer humanity's destiny. Micheal Salla, Ph.D. https://www.youtube.com/watchv=3cfdtlvac0. Her website is. Transcript of this second interview with Elena Danaan. Exopolitics. Elena Danaan's second interview transcript. There is a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman and child. Before, leave this high and noble office, intend to expose this plot. JFK tell them that we are not here to save you, but we are here, we came to help you save yourselves. Farhan Micheal, welcome and aloha everyone, to my Exopolitics podcast. This is Dr. Micheal Salla, and I'm very pleased to once again have Elena Danaan as a guest and looking forward to hearing everything Elena would like to share. Elena, thank you, Micheal. I'm very pleased you invited me for a second time. Would like first to give an update regarding to Stephen Chua, the whistleblower from Area 51. I was feeling very remorseful to have allowed him to do an interview with me, because he wanted it a lot. And although, gave him the choice, he seemed very determined. And he lost his life. He passed away after the interview a few days after. So imagine how I was feeling. So a few days ago, I'd say 2 days ago, had someone contact me by email saying, a person very famous in the UFO research community, he would like to contact me by phone. So, gave my phone number. This person phoned me and this person said that Stephen Chua had already contacted him a while ago wanting to disclose all his information because he was feeling threatened. And so this person said to Stefan, you need really to consider it because it can be very dangerous for you. So please consider it and come back to me if really you've decided, but wouldn't advise it because your life will. And this person never heard about him again. And then Stephen contacted me. And this person told me, he was determined you have nothing to do with this death, and if you had refused to do it, he would have asked someone else until someone would have agreed to do it. So it is really a weight off of my shoulders and could really move on, and this person say that also Stephen gave me the privilege to help release his burden. And it was an honor, and it really was an honor that he chose me to do so. So really honor this ends well, although people apparently who are in Stephen's situation to know things have had a warning as well. So, don't know what's going on. So that's the update. Michael, thank you. Yes, that's very important because it does confirm that Stephen Chow was very aware that his life was in danger by coming forward and that he was still wanting to do that. And he pressed and contacted others before contacting you. At least one other that we know of, and then eventually chose to tell his story through you. And the other thing is that we have his obituary now, that it confirmed the date of his passing was March 6th, and that he was someone that worked in the Singapore military. And I've actually been contacted by some Singapore officials who are looking into his military records. They're looking into it for me. And I did approach their military. Sent in a request for his military record. So, hope that we'll get some confirmation about his military records, because he says he worked for 10 years and he was in this elite Singaporean squad that was specially trained to fight all sorts of enemies, including extraterrestrials. So that would be great to get that confirmation. Elena, yes. Michael, so, thought for this interview it would be good to introduce my audience more to you and your special background, because, think you have a really remarkable background and your contact experiences as something that are very compelling. Have read your book A Gift from the Stars. So in that book you give a lot of information, but it seems that there's one incident that really was just pivotal in everything else that happened. And that happened when you were around 9 years old and involved in alien rescue. So why don't you tell the audience what happened? The abduction. Elena, thank you. So, was abducted by Greys from Zeta Reticuli. What happened? Saw a UFO hovering above the house the night before, and it was a traditional flying saucer, metallic with a dome above and a dome under, very elegant, radiating with an orange halo around it. And it was very close to the house. And it was there hovering, and my grandmother and myself were very hypnotized by it. And the UFO suddenly changed color to white and just shot off in the sky in a zigzag-like zoom like this, quick. And had last year to do hypnosis, to go undergo a hypnosis session to really find out what had happened that night, because the following morning, the only memory had was to wake up in my bed naked and my lower body covered by blood. And had triangular marks in my inside of my wrists and a big headache. So, was hospitalized for 2 months because they couldn't find out what it was. So going back to this event, what the hypnotist found out was quite mind-blowing. Wasn't expecting this. So on this night 3 small Greys beamed into my room and there was this blue light beam and it drugged me in. And at the moment, was unable to speak or move. There was no sound coming out of me, was very numb, and it was light, but at the same time there was a substance that was very weird. And this light allowed us to lift and go through the roof. It was going through the materials, through the building, thinking about it afterwards, suppose this was maybe of a higher density or, don't know. Other people will explain that better than do, because I'll just inexperienced or not a scientist. And, was beamed on board this ship. Found myself on the cold floor and the air was very thin. Had difficulty breathing and it was very cold. They removed my clothes, my nightgown very automatically, like very quickly. They are very used to that. They go very fast. It's like a factory. They must do a lot of people in one night. They lay me down on a metallic table. They strapped my ankles, my neck and my wrists. And these wrist straps had tiny needles, very tiny, in the shape of a triangle, and it was explained afterwards that was putting a kind of a serum in my body, something to do with my nervous system. So, was there, terrified, so could see my heart was beating, and was breathing, but the rest of my muscles weren't functioning. And my eyes had my peripheral vision like everyone, but couldn't move the eyeballs. It was very interesting. Was, of course, terrified. One of them drilled in the back of my head with a tool, a double needle. It was turning very fast. They were very thin needles. Knew afterwards that they had inserted an implant, a tracker. Could feel the pain, but bearable? It was very painful, but suppose if that had happened without numbing my nervous system, maybe halfway, don't know. Think, would have died with the pain. But it was painful but bearable. And they, the two of the ones insert something in my belly with a long, oblong, metallic instrument. And that was what caused the bleeding. At that moment. So they were then for small greys, and it was really the synthetic life forms without any feelings, really like robots, inexpressive, cold. And then came a fifth one, a small gray, but little bit bigger. And he looks like a living being? He was a biological that seemed to be the overseer or the captain of the ship. And he was very stressed. They were talking by telepathy and he was hurrying them. Understood he was hurrying them to finish that task. And at that moment, there was the whole structure just trembled, shook and was already traumatized and very scared. So at that point, it was even more so. How could that be possible? Michael, before we go on to the next part of the story, maybe you can just explain a little bit so that the four greys that abducted you, they look synthetic. They looked robotic. But this fifth one came along who was in command. He was a little bit taller and he looked more human. So can you explain what was he like, a hybrid or was he like another type of gray? Elena, it didn't look hybrid. Would say gray, another type of gray with a small nose, very small. The bone structure of the face was more complex. So you could see it was really being with all the muscles and the articulation and the cheekbones and expressions. It didn't have any eyebrows, but it could frown his forehead. The muscles were playing on the face. It really looked real, like biological person. But it was a gray. Didn't have the impression he was a hybrid. Maybe he was. Don't know. But the other ones had features. They were smaller, thinner, and their features were way more simple. No nose, just a slit for the mouth. And very simple head, so simple. Simplified at the maximum, I'd say. And very skinny, and they were moving like mechanical, like very fast. Could see the difference. Michael, right. So we could say that. So the one that was in command that's an actual gray from Zeta Reticulum. But even the grays from Zeta Reticulum have drones or clones or something that look like them that we call grays. We lump them all together. But there's a distinct difference, so that the grays themselves use gray synthetics as kind of robots to do the menial work. Elena, that's it. Agree totally with that. That's how understood it. Michael, right. So now you're down there and they've inserted something into your stomach, and then you start to. Oh, look, one other thing you were talking about, hearing the one that was in command giving telepathic commands to the other four. So were you hearing the other four? Could you hear the other four communicating amongst themselves? Or was it just the one that was in command? You could only hear him. Elena, couldn't hear anyone as long as they were talking telepathically. They weren't communicating with me at all. Michael, oh, see. The rescue Elena, and when the ship started to tremble, the first shock. Would say the captain, the biological one? He addressed to the synthetics vocally. Think he panicked at something. And the first time, the only time, heard him talking their language vocally, think maybe the synthetics are not able, don't know. Have no idea. So he spoke with insect-like sounds like crackling, like it was really super freaky. And he was stressed and in a hurry, and he was ordering the other ones and something. And the robotic drones, they removed the straps at my ankles and at my neck. And they were about to remove the wrists, probably they wanted to send me back in a hurry, get rid of me in a hurry. At that moment, just before they managed, they did try to remove my wristbands, my ties. The door of the room exploded, but not exploded like an explosion with smoke. And because it wasn't like this, it was a big sound, a very deafening sound. Don't know. It was a really weird sound, but it was vibration and the door just disintegrated. There was no flame, no thing, and the materials just went into dust. And what thought was smoke? It was in fact dust. And it was like very dusty atmosphere suddenly and debris. And heard voices of two men behind this door, and they were shouting and they came in through the door. And that was the most scary moment. You know, I've had deep hypnosis. I've told this story so many times, but when it comes to that moment when two tall men rushed in. They were wearing spacesuits. Think environmental suit or spacesuit like tied to the body, but a plasticky feel and creamy color. And they had helmets, and with the lights and the dust, couldn't really see their faces. All could see there were humans with kind of blonde hair, but couldn't really see. They had weapons. They were small tubes, maybe like this long. Small tubes. And they fired rays at the four. They were the four synthetics who just collapsed. It went so fast and it was very violent. And one of the men, it went very fast. And while one of the men undid my wristbands, the other one caught the gray biological one, the captain, suppose, and he strangled him. That was so shocking because these grays, their frightening appearance, especially for a child and then a child in this situation, even for an adult, and seeing one dying, strangled to death. This is ugly. This is absolutely ugly and horrible. But it was kind of a rage because he could have killed him, but he didn't, he had pleasure in doing it. And this one, the one who strangled the gray, he lifted me in his arms and was completely numb. And could feel the plastic feel of his suit against my face. And they ran with me behind his door again. And there was a big flash of light, and it was like if there were stars, a vortex of stars around. And what, understood, think we just teleported to another ship, their ship. And was rescued. And that's how I was rescued. So once in this ship, it was totally different. It was very bright. The light seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere in the same time. It was warm. That's the first thing, noticed. It was warm and the air was better. Could breathe better. They lay me down on a couch. And so there was another man in the room and a woman. So 3 men and a woman. The woman took care of me. So they were Nordic-type extraterrestrials. The 2 men who had rescued me were removing their suits, but could see this woman she was wearing, as they all were under the spacesuit, blue tights, uniforms, in sort of a glittery material, a golden belt with little sort of devices on it. Was taught later these belts are not just belts. They are devices that carry weapons, sensors, all sorts of devices. She was blonde, straight hair, cut hair. She had a triangular face. She was of a different species than the men. She was way smaller. She had triangular face and huge green eyes, enormous green eyes. She was very kind. She cleans my leg. She cleans all the blood, and she started to take care of me medically. She tried to remove the implant. At the same time, once was cleaned, my savior put his spacesuit jacket on me to cover my nudity and to make me warm, to keep me warm. And it was real warm, amazingly warm. And it was so warm that, could feel the temperature, although, couldn't move. It was so weird. And, kind of fell asleep and, relaxed. Felt most safe. And so at that moment, she was fiddling behind my head and, couldn't feel anything, maybe a tingling. Sometimes. But it wasn't painful. They were very careful not to hurt me. And she was putting her hand on my shoulder. She was very motherly with me, very nice. And then tension grew between her and my rescuer. The man whom saw really that he had a blonde, wavy hair, shoulder length, big blue eyes, very high cheekbones, very angular face structure, very muscular. They were all like this, the men. The woman was from another species. This guy, my rescuer, seemed to be in control of the ship, and he started to command her. This was talking telepathically. And he was doing this to her. They were having an exchange, and then they started talking a language. So sometimes they were talking telepathically. Sometimes they were talking voice. And, couldn't understand his language, sounds very nice. And it was like if she refused to do something that he was pushing her to do. And she finally accepted and she reprogrammed. Again my implant. And, felt a little buzz and suddenly things were different. Could understand what they were saying? That was very weird. And so, fell asleep at that stage and, woke up afterwards. So what they did was explained. They couldn't remove my tracker because, had a tracker. It was just a tracker monitor put by the Greys to track me and monitor my health, because they had put something in me. With that process aborted, they couldn't complete their process. But they had put them on the tracker. And this tracker was active. And they would have been found by other Greys with me on board. So they needed to get rid of the tracker. They couldn't remove it because they could have, but where it is, it's dangerous to remove it because it's in my brain. It's somewhere where it would have affected me. So what they did, they retuned it, they jammed it and they retuned it in their frequencies. So then that was it. And, woke up. Yes. Sorry. Michael, so was going to say essentially, they kind of repurposed it so rather than it being something that would emit a signal that the Greys would be able to track, they repurposed it so that it would now emit a frequency that, and maybe you're going to talk about this. Terms of future communications with them or them monitoring you. So maybe, jumped in a little early and you were going to get to that. But if you didn't, maybe you can say a little bit about what it was that that gray implant had been repurposed to do that would enable you and your rescuers to communicate. Elena, yes. When, woke up, thought, was in full possession of my muscles and everything. And my rescuer came to me and could see we were in the ship. Could see by the front screen the curvature of the Earth. And then, was shocked and just realized, oh my god, I'm really in space and above Earth. Seeing that at 9 years old, it was like, oh my god. And so he came. He sat next to me and he was very gentle. He said, listen, you have been abducted by malevolent beings and you are too young to understand what it was for. But we rescued you and be sure that we will look after you all your life and you are protected because they will try to get you back, but we will not allow that. And he said we have retuned, reassigned, the implant in your head to use our frequencies, then we will be able to monitor you and make sure you're safe always and communicate with you if need be. And, had millions of questions but he said, we'll now need to hide your memory and we are bringing you home. And, protested. Didn't want to have my memory erased, not erased he said hidden. And he put a hand on my head and, fell asleep and, woke up in my bed. The implant communication system still have this implant. One day when, was at school, was in my 18 inches year they activated it. Have had several physical contacts in between? But that day they activated the implant. Felt like suddenly somebody was sticking a nail in my head and, fell on my knees and it was very painful. And at the moment, said, oh, that hurts it stopped. The pain stopped and, felt this buzzing, like somebody looking for radio frequency, like you turn the button, nearly like this. But it wasn't really like this, but it was similar. Thought about that and suddenly, heard his voice in my head as clear as if, was with someone at the phone, as clear as phoning to someone. And he said to me in French, because it was in France, it was happening. He said, do not worry, we are just doing some attunement. And, knew this voice. Could see in my head who it was, that it was this young man with blonde hair. And because, have had 3 contacts before in between that, may speak of. So, recognized his voice. And, knew it was him and, was okay. That was one time. And they didn't do it for a long time. And it's just recently that in 2018, they came back. And they've activated all that. And since then I'm in contact with them daily, with him. That's the story. Michael, so this extraterrestrial that you were hearing, that was one of your rescuers, is that Thorhan? Elena, Thorhan, yes. Michael, so he is someone that is a central figure in your contact experiences and in the communications that you have. So you've had the physical encounters with the different types of extraterrestrials, the Greys and the Pleiadians who rescued you and also Thorhan, one of your rescuers. He is one of the key people that continues to communicate with you through this implant that had been originally a Grey implant, but now had been repurposed by this Pleiadian group. Elena, yes, yeah. It's absolutely amazing. Amazing. Yes, that's what's happening. Michael, so that means that at any time, they can communicate with you through this implant and give information to you, and they've been doing that. And so how does that process work? Because I've seen you doing in a few interviews with others and you sometimes get into telepathic communication and other times you begin to channel. So why don't you just explain what the difference is? Elena, yes, sure. It's okay. They taught me how to activate it. This implant is switched on by an overload of energy. So usually it's emotional charge. That means if, slumped or suddenly I'm scared of something or, have a violent crisis of tears or something happens, my body produces electricity and it just switches on it sends a signal, it switches on the implant and it sends a signal and they adjust. Brings in their attention so they connect to see just what's going on. But then, learned how to do it, to activate it purposely, willingly. Understood that. So went, okay, I'm going to produce a big load of energy with body magnetism because I've been studying Reiki and Qigong, so could really understand that, can really concentrate energy and send it where the implant is and just put all my heart to. Just buzz it to the maximum and sometimes it clicks. Promise, here. Like this makes clicking noise and it feels on. Then there's a kind of a background noise. Hear it, and I'm connected with him, Thorhan. So how does it work, this different way of communicating? Telepathy. I've discovered with amazement that telepathy is not what thought it was. That means that there are two levels of telepathic connection. One level is the emotional level and the thought level. That means it's like mind meld like in the movies. It's like mind to mind connected. That means you can read each other's thought. That's on one level, but they never really do that because they respect everyone's privacy. Then if they want to use telepathy, as they do very daily, basically they do communicate like this. They won't communicate on this level of emotions and thought and mind. It's another level where it's a language level that is disconnected from the thought sphere of the mind. That means you can communicate, you can speak with someone telepathically, but you do not have access to his private thoughts. That was a discovery. So, don't know how to do that myself. Just know how to connect my mind. But they do it. They switch on this kind of channel. And so, won't be able to know what he thinks. And he will not be able to know what, think. But I will speak in my head and will hear his voice as well. It's a communication like this. And that's very interesting. Channeling is something different. Do it less and less because, don't need to do it? Never needed to do it. Its telepathic contact is great enough. But people have asked me to do channelings because they wanted to see and know, was okay. Alright. But so I've been doing that for a while. But then I'm not here for an entertainment, so, stopped. So how it works, and that's the scary stuff, these implants, this one is a great technology but used by the Federation. It is great technology by these implants. Anyone that is attuned to this kind of implant can control physically a body. So this channeling, when it works with me, when used to deal with Thorhan because, trust him, it's with my agreement I give my consent, and by manipulating by access, by distance this implant of course, and it is we agree that is going to manipulate the top half of my body, my shoulders, the muscles of my shoulder, my neck and my head and my face, and use my voice. That's very creepy. But he explained to me he doesn't want to do it anymore either, just to amuse people. Implant abuse, because he said this technology, when it is implanted in people against their will, and it can be very, very tiny, and people can be remotely controlled and they don't even know it. They can remote control your cells, your voice, your speech, your actions, and even your thoughts. And he said, now you have an idea that these trackers, what they really are, they are trackers. They send a signal like a sat-nav signal, but they are attuned to your nervous system, and people can plug on it, and they can do anything. And he showed me by this channeling, and, know now what these implants are able to do to you. And it's very scary because he told me don't let anyone put into you the tracker dust. Notice they're talking about the nano, we're not going to talk about that. And that's the same thing. So that was what I've learned about the technology of these implants and how it works. Michael, yes, that's very, very important. What you just described there, that gray implant that was put into you back then, guess that we're talking around 1979 1980, when it was put into you, that their intent was that this would not only track you, but also could be used to control you. And that explains a lot of stories from abductees that say that they just begin to lose their memories and just do exactly what the Greys command them to do. And they just kind of like follow because they're literally controlled. But because your implant was repurposed by the Pleiadians, now you can manually activate it when you want. And that enables you to kind of like either telepathically communicate or to have the channeling two-way contact going with your Pleiadians. So you get information that way. But the mind control aspect has been pretty much deactivated in your part because the Pleiadians, they respect your free will and they're trying to help raise consciousness on the planet. But that was not the original intent of the implant. And that kind of like brings to mind what Elon Musk is trying to do with his Neuralink, that people think that this is all about being able to access the cloud and this is part of the kind of coming way. But in fact, we need to keep Elena, the cloud is going to access you. Michael, exactly. Yes, that's right. It's a two-way process. Not only can you access the cloud, but those that are in control of the cloud can access you and can control you. So yeah, that's very important that we understand that these implants have that kind of twofold process that, yes, you can get information going up, but also you can get information coming down where you're controlled or manipulated. Elena, yes. And that's something we do also with Thorhan. We can decide. He showed me that, can see through his eyes and hear with what he hears. Or you can do that the other way around. So it's very nice because sometimes, hear the click and the buzz and hear his voice. Want to show you something. So, close my eyes and wait, and I see like a screen behind my eyes and see what he sees. If open my eyes, it goes away and it shows me sort of where he is and what it does. And sometimes, do the same. I'm in a nice place on a beach and say, connect, click. Sometimes, can't, but sometimes it works. And I said, hey, want to show you something. And, no, there's a different intensity and, look like, try to look very seriously. And then when I close my eyes, no, it disconnects and he sees what, see? It's very nice. Micheal, wow. That's great. So you can get a lot of kind of first-hand or eyewitness memories of what is really happening in real time. And that's something that hopefully we can talk more about, what Thorhan is doing and what he's telling you about current events. So that brings me to this experience you had on November 9th and November 10th, 2018. You wrote about it in the book and there was this significant contact experience you had and you were told about a dangerous period for the planet that would occur in 2 years' time. So tell us about that. Thorhan reunion Elena, it was in November 2018, so had nearly forgotten about them, although have had a lot of different contacts. Physical contact beamed again about that was another story. So in 2018, hadn't had contact maybe for 15 years with them and suddenly one night, need to go out. Live on the west coast of Ireland and it was nighttime and, went outside. Live on the shore of the Atlantic and on the sea and, just looked above the sea and, saw 2 UFOs just dancing in the sky like, hey, look at us. They were doing this and moving in the same time and changing speed and coming back and forth and, went, hey. And so, went, oh my god. And, could feel in my heart there, back there. Oh, wow. UFOs, maybe it's my friends. Maybe. And as said, hey, see you, they shot off on the sea. They disappeared. So there was a connection and, went to bed in this night, had a contact which I'm going to describe, but what I learned in the papers the following day just blew my mind even more. Because this night is known in Ireland as the Shannon incident. The Shannon airport is near where, live, not very far. 2 UFOs have been sighted by planes, 2 planes, commercial planes, and one of the planes has spoken with the control tower and the conversation has been recorded and you can find it. Shannon incident, Google it and you'll find everything about it. So that night, wasn't expecting it or just saw a UFO. That's so cool. This is great. But, wasn't expecting the rest. Light beam in my bedroom. What? And this time, wasn't lifted. Was like teleported, but it was very quick and I'm on board the ship again, my friends and Thorhan is here. There's way more people. My other lady is here. The others are here. There are more people. Different uniforms and black hair, different races. And it's hugs and joy and they are very happy and everyone is buzzing with energy and joy and happiness in this ship. It's really impressive. What's going on and why, how? And Thorhan says to me, we are back. We are back like this. We are back. Yes, great. What's up? And he said, we are back because something extraordinary is going to happen for this planet. Something extraordinary is going to happen for this planet. And they were very enthusiastic about it. And that, always tell myself that, need to remember how enthusiastic they were because it wasn't like, oh my god, you're coming by because that's going to go so bad and we're here to help. No, it was. Yes, that's good. Yes. We're looking forward to it. But that was weird. That's great. That means very hopeful for our future. But then it was so, say, what's going to happen then? And then suddenly, oh, maybe we spoke too much. They were like, oh, calm down and. So what's going to happen? He said into a so he said okay. I can't tell you what's going to happen. Just know that we are here. We come here to. He said these words. We came back to clear the mud at the bottom of the pond. He didn't say swamp. He said pond that everybody sees it. And then the water will be cleared. Couldn't understand that. Went, oh, yeah. And then said, I can tell you that as well. Enjoy life. Go out. Go to the pub as much as you can. See your friends. Go and listen to some music. Party. Party a lot. And have social life as you have had before because in 2 years' time, something's going to happen and you won't like it. And he said, it's temporary. But that's going to be a bit difficult. What's going to happen in 2 years' time? And so he told me something then related to politics. Are we allowed to talk about politics or? Micheal, yes, politics is fine. Elena, okay. Because you named a politician. Is it okay? Micheal, yes, that's. Yes, you can name. You can name the politician. That's okay. Elena, okay. Try not to. So said, okay. 2 years' time, it's the American elections. Is that linked to it? And he went like, I say, okay, so it is. And said, oh, will the guy in place now be re-elected? And he said, he will by the people. But you will see. See. Okay. That's me talking politics. That's him, actually. And that was very interesting in the context of what happened recently in December 2020, told him. That really didn't go how you said it would regarding to this political situation. And he said, it did. What I told you happened. But now people need to see the face of the dark and who their enemies are. And he said no more. Micheal, Elena, so that's what it is about for the prediction. He told me. No, Micheal, so that prediction was given to you in November 2018 in that conflict experience where you're taken up into the ship. And yes, that was actually a famous UFO sighting in Ireland, the Shannon incident. So it's documented. So this is great because it means that you actually have independent corroboration for your contact experience. This sighting of the 2 UFOs that was seen and discussed. And you talk about that in your book. So Farhan talks about this period that we're in right now, a period where the bottom of the pond, or if you want to call it the swamp, is going to be revealed and it's going to be purged. So we're right in the middle of that, because right now, as we all know, everyone is kind of like waiting to see what's going to happen. And there's a lot we can go into, but we probably want to focus on your experience. Elena, don't like to talk about these things. You know too much. It's not related to me. Micheal, that's right. But think talking about the Galactic Federation is important because that seems to be something, because, personally have been aware of the Galactic Federation for several decades now. Worked with a number of contactees, Alex Collier being one of them, and, no, you're going to be interviewing him in a week or so that's great to see Alex out there and still sharing his information. But yeah, the Galactic Federation is an organization that Farhan and this Pleiadian group belongs to. So why don't you tell us what you know of the Galactic Federation and Farhan's role with it? Elena, yes. So, discovered that on board this ship, there were different races. He was from the Pleiades, another guy as well. The lady was from Series B and another guy was from Epsilon Eridani. So it was a mix of races and, couldn't really get it. So, was explained later on that they are one of the many scout ships that are rescuing people from abductions, and they try to rescue as many people as possible. And when it's children, it's great. And then, learn that they are doing operations not only rescuing people. Joining the Galactic Federation. They are part of a big, very ancient organization called the Galactic Federation of Worlds. They rarely say of worlds, they say the Galactic Federation. So it's a benevolent federation of many worlds that have reached a level. They call it level 2. It's interstellar travel. But that means that your civilization is able to leave the boundaries of your solar system with inhabited flights. So that's the requirement. Micheal, explain that again. We didn't get that. What kind of flights? Elena, /inhabited is interstellar flights with people on board. Micheal, Elena, thank you. That's the technological requirement, because once you've reached this stage, you are ready to share higher knowledge, technological knowledge with other civilizations, because they put all the knowledge in common to technological and medical knowledge in common in this federation that everybody shares and benefit from each other. But you need for that to have reached a certain level, minimum level. But that also is not the only requirement. The other requirements, which is as important, is that you have reached a stage of peace, that you are a benevolent species and you have no desire to harm anyone, that you have reached a certain stage of wisdom, and that your planet is federated in peace like its own a federated world in peace. And that is a condition. They won't accept a world civilization who, despite the level of technology, is fighting each other and being belligerent and killing each other and has ideas of conquering other worlds to take resources. Know that they don't take these ones. And we are a bit like this, have to say. So they are trying very hard to help us reaching a stage of peace, getting on with each other. The problem is that our occupants, they do the contrary. They try to manipulate us to try to maintain us in a stage of arguing with each other, divide and conquer. So this collective federation looks after the balance and justice in this galaxy, the peace. So people say, oh, but what about the Galactic Federation of Light? So, have been? Answer to that this name as such doesn't exist. People, when they say Galactic Federation of Light, they mention the Galactic Federation, that of worlds, but they don't know really about it. So they say of light, oh, because they're fighting for the light and dark. It's a very Machiavellian. But it's more subtle than this. The Galactic Federation works for balance, and sometimes balance involves allowing some destructive force to harm a culture that this culture learns and grows from it and reaches a stage of wisdom that they would have never reached otherwise. Sometimes so they are not like Justice League killing all the baddies. They look for balance. That's how it has been explained. It's something very delicate to understand. And they go by one greatest universal rule, and even the baddies, the malevolent ones, also go by the same rule: free will. This is, for them, sacred for everyone in this galaxy. It's like they've understood that this is the law of evolution, the law of all life. Free will. It is only by your free decision that the actions you do by your own, that you evolve. And so they respect our decisions. They have been helping us for a very, very, very long time. They were, from what I've been told, their attention was brought towards our little planet at the fringe of this galaxy by the Andromedan Council, who had foreseen our future and have said to the Federation, who are more a military kind of organization, hey, this little blue planet there at the edge of the galaxy, they are going to be in trouble soon, so let's do something about it. So they have been helping us behind the scenes, not to interfere with our evolution, but they've been helping us a lot. They've created recently something that they call the Alliance, or the Earth Alliance. It's a military alliance of forces between this Galactic Federation and some Earth military departments, factions, but benevolent ones, to help clearing all the undergrounds, notably things like that, you know. So that's what the alliance is. What else about this Galactic Federation? Recently there have been messages, they started too fast, because humanity is awakening, the consciousness of humanity is awakening. And we start to realize that we are more powerful than we were conditioned to believe. So that's the moment. That's now. That's the window when we stand up in our sovereignty and step out of slavery. So the Galactic Federation started to send out messages to as many